barrier of the nation state that means that it can't resolve these very problems. Nation states haven't always existed, we should point out. They were a creation of capitalism, and it's the creation of nation states to basically, their role was to protect, and it still is to this day, to protect the profits of their own capitalists. And if you ever think that globalization has gotten rid of this problem, then just ask yourself, in 2008, what did the different political leaders do? They basically saved the local capitalists. You know, the big bankers, the big car companies, all of these came running to the protection of the local state and government in order to bail them out. But not only do we see the failure of the market, but we also see even the failure of the attempts for governments on a capitalist basis, on a top-down kind of Keynesian basis, if you like, to try and resolve the problems. You see Green Deal politics not really taking anything forwards. Keynesian-style measures of taxation, spending, regulation in order to promote green industries and green jobs. And so far, this has not really taken off in any meaningful way. And the reason is that these kind of Keynesian green policies suffer from the same problems that Keynesian policies in general do, which is that capitalism's in crisis. There's been an enormous transfer of private debt into public debt, and governments are already up to their eyeballs, basically, in this public debt. So there's nothing for them to be able to spend on the green technologies and green jobs that we need. And so far from being able to invest and spend, actually governments at this time, as we see across Europe and in Britain, of carrying out massive austerity, are being told by the market that they need to chop, chop, chop. Fundamentally, it comes down to the problem that governments don't really have any money of their own. They've only got what they can raise in taxes. And therefore it comes down to a simple question, as with the economic crisis. It's a question of who pays, right? Class question in that respect. Who is going to pay for the things that we need to do in order to avert climate change? Now, so far it sounds like I've painted a very pessimistic picture. Capitalism hasn't done this, capitalism hasn't done that. Well, fair enough, but what's the alternative? What's the solution? Now, if you read Marx in particular, there's a good quote in his contribution to a critique of political economy where he says, quote, "Mankind inevitably sets itself only such tasks as it is able to solve, since closer examination will always show that the problem itself arises only when the material conditions for its solution are already present, or at least in the course of formation." In other words, what Marx is saying here is we only ever really perceive of a problem in society when already the material conditions have grown within society to go about solving that problem. In other words, today, in regards to the environmental question, and climate change in particular, it's only when we actually started realizing the problems of climate change that capitalism by that point had already created the means by which we could solve these very problems. We have a knowledge now of the problem facing us, but we also now have the technologies and the wealth in society to actually go about addressing these problems. For example, take the example of money. I've said governments don't have the money to solve this problem, but the point is that obviously the wealth does exist out there, but it's concentrated in the hands of a tiny few, of private individuals. One only has to look at the staggering statistics of inequality